My name
Oh,
is Jonathan Blake. Um, I am 75 years old. I was born in 1949. Um, I had all kinds of, childhood illnesses, as you do. I did have scarlet fever, which is an interesting one because that even, back in when I was born, was potentially a killer. But
yes.
anyway, I had all that. I had chicken pox. So, of course, now I get shingles. But the main thing was that in 1982, in October 1982, I was diagnosed with a virus. At that point, the virus had no name. I was given between 3 and 9 months to live. Um, but as you can hear, I am still here. Um, Eventually, the virus was given a name. First of all, in 1986, it was called HTLV3. And in 1988, it became known as HIV, Human Immunodeficiency Virus. So that is me. I live in London. I live in the UK. And yeah, that's my intro.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Look, I believe that beyond illness or particular situation we have overcome, there is a spiritual strength that we have to overcome these particular things, you know? Do you recognize you with that force to overcome all those years with this diagnosis?
I what I recognize is that I think that you have to have a kind of a positive attitude towards life and living. You have to enjoy your life. I don't know whether it's, there is part of me that wants it to be spiritual. I believe in the soul. I do not believe in organized religion.
No.
I think that organized religion is, to me, it's an anathema and it's purely a method of control.
Yes.
But there is a spirit. There are spirits. I much prefer paganism.
Yes.
Where one is dealing with the soul. I think Wicca.
Yes.
Is really interesting because I do feel that I'm a spiritual person, and I suppose that has helped me. But I also think it's because of a love of nature.
Yes.
But most importantly, I think you have to have a positive attitude to both living and dying.
And dying. That's one of the questions that I want to say.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I think that I was very fortunate in terms that my mother was Jewish, my father was Jewish. I was brought up Jewish in Judaism. But it was Reformed Judaism, and it was very, it was kind of you take and you pick and you mix and match, which was easy. But interestingly, my maternal grandfather was an Orthodox rabbi.
Wow.
So my mother's father was an Orthodox rabbi, but he died way before I was born. So I never met him. But I always had a kind of a sense about him. I don't know why.
Did you believe in this death sentence that back days in 4 years ago? Did you really?
Yeah, no,
yes.
Oh yeah. I mean, when I was given it, I mean, it absolutely kind of, in a way, it destroyed me. And I was living in the East End, and I remember once they basically, well, let me tell you how it all happened, because it's such an interesting story, if I
Yes.
may. I had been to San Francisco in 1981, January 1981, to go to this very dear friend of mine's wedding. She had invited all her and her partner also invited their gay friends to come and be ushers at their wedding. My friend Deborah is Jewish, and it was a very, it was a Jewish wedding, and in Jewish weddings you have ushers, you don't have bridesmaids.
Yes.
So anyway, there were 5 of us that were invited. I stayed with a friend of mine who I knew from London, who had moved to San Francisco, and that was great. And San Francisco, I've always loved bathhouses, so I did the bathhouses. And of course, some years later, and it really wasn't until I had received my diagnosis and been living with it, that I suddenly realized that it was actually 1981 where I met my virus in the bathhouses.
Yes.
Anyway, that's by the by. But what is interesting is that out of the 5 ushers, I am the only one that is still alive. And that's kind of,
It is,
but
yeah.
and I think that anyway, so I get my diagnosis. I'm kept in the hospital for 2 days. The way that I got to the hospital was that I was living in the East End. I went to see my GP because every single lymph node in my body had just erupted. It started round about sort of, June, July, and they were just getting, and so by September, it was just, I could no longer work. I was walking like a gorilla.
Oh,
my arms were akimbo, my legs were akimbo. The glands in the groin were enlarged, just everywhere. Anyway, I made an appointment to go and see my GP. And as I walked in the surgery, I remember I got into her room and she stood up and she said, "Shake my hand." So I shook her hand. And as I shook her hand, she put her thumb in the lymph node in the crook of my arm. And I went, "Ow, what did you do that for?" It was really painful. She said, "That's the sailor's handshake." She said whenever the sailors went into port, they would shake the women's or the men's hand that they were going with. And if that lymph node was up, they wouldn't go with them because it was a sign of syphilis. So she said, "Have you been to have a syphilis test recently?" So I said, "Well, I've had syphilis, but no, I haven't." So the next day I went to the special clinic and they were all over me. And they wanted to do a biopsy. And so they put me in a sideboard. And I was kept there for 2 days waiting for the results because, it wasn't all quick like it is now. It was old style. Anyway, when I got the results, they basically told me, "You have a virus, which is what is calling what they called persistent lymphadenopathy, which meant that basically my whole lymph system was just enlarged and it was persistent, it wouldn't go away." And basically, they said, "There is no cure for it, there is no medicine, there is nothing that we can do, and you have between 3 and 9 months to live." Of course, there will be palliative care when the time
yes.
comes. At 33, it's the last thing that you want to hear, palliative care.
Oh my God.
Anyway, and then they said, you can go home. Completely kind of, I was just in this daze. I don't even remember how I got back to my flat in the East End, but I do remember just closing the door and absolutely collapsing. I felt winded.
Yes.
It was like
cold.
it had just, no, it wasn't cold. It is just like it had knocked the stuffing out of me. You know, it's like, it was, I think that one just was kind of deadened by it, you know?
Yes.
I can't, it's not even, I couldn't give you a color of it. I couldn't, it's just so emptied of everything, you know, completely as though someone had punched you in the solar plexus and all your air had just gone out and it wasn't coming back in. I was just
like
numb.
knockout,
but numb, you know.
Wow. And could you share this with someone right there?
No. At that point, you know, I didn't even know where I was, what I was doing, or what's there. And I went back to my flat and I just kind of collapsed. Yes. And I didn't get in touch with anybody. It was like I didn't know what I was going to do.
What did you do that time, in this moment, alone? And
I don't even remember how the days just went by, you know. I mean, it was weird. I don't know whether I had a bicycle, whether I got on a bicycle and just cycled around the East End, but I was feeling really isolated. It was weird. And eventually I got in touch with my younger brother. I mean, which was sort of much later on, because he and I had always been close, and he had retrained and he had become a doctor, and he had he trained in Birmingham, which is where I was born, and then came up to London, and he worked at a hospital called the Westminster Hospital, and then that was closed because it was prime real estate site, and it was merged with another hospital called the Chelsea and Westminster, and there they had this clinic called the Kobler Clinic, and that was one of the centers of excellence for HIV. So eventually, and this is, you know, quite some time on, I did tell him, because I thought he will be able to explain to my parents, because the last thing that I wanted to do was to tell my parents. You know, they had dealt with my coming out when I was 21, my homosexuality. I thought that is enough. And I thought, when I get ill, because obviously I was going to get ill, he would be able to explain to my parents exactly what was going on, because there was so much misinformation. You know, the right-wing press weaponized it and used it as a weapon to batter homosexuals. Virus, you know, and viruses can affect anybody. Yes. You know? Yes. And so, you know, for the heterosexual black women who were hugely affected by it in this country, to have to deal with the fact that they've got a virus which is a homosexual virus.
The discovering of this virus was the perfect excuse to that propaganda, fear propaganda. I believe that.
What is awful is that, there are all these evangelical Americans that go throughout the world to all these indigenous countries, and they, try to throw Christianity down their throat and then moralize it. And then all those people that don't fit in. I don't mind so much about, the fear, as long as you're given the information about how you can deal with it. In this country, and it was really interesting because what happened was that they had this tombstone advertisement, and I remember that there was John Hurt's voice was telling you that this is a virus, and the words were, this is a virus, it can affect anybody.
Yes.
Which is what viruses do. But it was written down that so it was there in print. But the way that the press used it was to weaponize it and just make it into this gay virus.
Yes.
And certainly my view is that it was because of that, and because of the fear. And one has to remember that, this was 1982.
82.
Well, actually, it was 87. 87 was when they did it. But there was no such thing. We didn't know about social media. You basically had the telephone.
Yes,
the landline.
Yes.
And you had newspapers.
Yes.
And you had magazines. Yes. And you might have television, but 1 or 2 channels. I mean, so there was very little way of getting information. And I remember that here, all they gave was one telephone number. And the telephone number was for lesbian and gay switchboard. They never asked them. They never informed them. They basically were
everybody.
a volunteer organization with 3 telephone lines. And this telephone number was given to every household in this country. And their phones just rang off the hook. I mean, how they dealt with it, but they did deal with it. They were absolutely amazing and continue to be amazing. But
so you didn't make that the AZT you didn't have that drug.
No. What happened
the first
was
drug.
And the AZT didn't happen until 1988. And there was a trial. There was a trial called the Concord trial. And they asked me if I would be a part of it, because obviously I'd been, living with this virus for
6 years. No?
6 years, 7 years. And they said, we get this cohort and we cut it in 2, and one half gets the pill and the other half gets the placebo. And I said, well, when you have this cohort, do you pair us up so that someone who's got the similar kind of build as I have, or metabolism as I have, we are paired up, and then one of us will get the pill and the other the placebo. And they went, oh, no, 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 that's far too complicated. And I saw red, and I got a little belligerent. And I said, well, now, if you could put a board down the middle of me and you give one half of me the pill and the other half the placebo, I mean, absurd, that would be a trial.
Yes.
But if you can't be bothered to pair us up, I can't be bothered to do your trial. And so I didn't do it.
Very good. And you're still here. I'm
still here. And I think that was because I know that a number of people started the trial and felt it was so nauseous, the pill, that they dropped out. They're still alive. But everybody that continued with it died. And they basically died because the way that chemotherapy drugs, or the old chemotherapy drugs, work is that they wipe out your whole immune system, taking the cancer with it, but they've wiped everything out. And so you have got no protection. And when you've got a virus which is also doing the same thing, that means that you are really open to any opportunistic infection that's around. And that is what happens. And you know that when you are being treated for cancer and they're using these things, you know, they make sure that you know, there are very few visitors, people wear masks, people are you know, they do everything they can to stop you getting infections as much as possible. But anyway.
Okay. But your story is magnific, because you said that all the people you knew that days and were diagnosed with the same thing, how many of them still alive like you?
There are not that many. I mean, I had a very dear friend who died a couple of years ago, and he was extraordinary because he had battled with 4 different cancers and survived them, but had a hernia operation. And they when they put him into you know, the ward, the recovery ward, it was so noisy, and they wouldn't listen to him, that he needed to somewhere for, you know, that was quiet, that he discharged himself from the hospital, came home, and basically someone tried to come and see him the next day, couldn't get in, and eventually they managed to get the police to open the door, and he was dead. He died. But you know, he wants to be at home. But most, I mean, there were a number of us. There were a number of us that survived, but eventually either older age or various cancers got them. I have been remarkably lucky in that at this point, apart from I have peripheral neuropathy, which was from my very first combination therapy. Because I remember that I took nothing, and my CD4 count in 1989 dropped to 200. And at 200, that was considered an AIDS diagnosis. And I absolutely freaked. And the Middlesex Hospital, which was where I was diagnosed, had closed down, and we'd been moved to somewhere called Mortimer Market. And that's where I was asked to be part of the Concord trial. And when I said that I
No.
didn't want to do it,
Mm.
I became a difficult patient.
Yes.
So I never saw the same consultant, registrar. It was always a new person, always a new person. So when at the point that I needed help, I didn't trust them. And I fled to the Chelsea and Westminster, which was the only other place that I knew because of my younger brother.
Yes.
Not that he was working there, but
Yes.
he had been there. So I went there, and the social workers there were fantastic because they sorted out my benefits. They got me this thing which was called my disability living allowance,
Yes.
because I had lost a lot of weight. And essentially they reckoned that I'd got 3 months to live again. So it was like rushed through. But then I went to see a young registrar called Mark Nelson, who now is a big professor all these years later. And he wanted to put me on the pills. And most people would have bitten his hand off. And I remember saying, can I think about it? Because I was still so angry about the whole AZT thing. And I didn't know what to do. But what was amazing was that when the government had done this Don't Die of Ignorance campaign, they had given money for the campaign. They had given money to pharmaceutical companies to start researching medication. But they had also given money to drop-in centers, to places where you could go as someone with HIV, where you could get support, information. And there was this wonderful place called the London Lighthouse, which was the first place that had on the 5th floor this hospice where you could go and die with dignity.
Yes,
because
beautiful.
Hospitals were really difficult. What was interesting was that basically the way that they started to treat AIDS patients completely changed the way that nursing happened. And that went throughout the hospitals, so that the way that cancer patients are treated today, has come from, and that was always to me shocking, that we were this special case. We were treated differently. But then it was understood that actually this is the way that every patient, whatever, their illness, disease is, this is how patients should be treated.
Yes, with dignity,
Absolutely, with dignity.
Yes. And when you felt that you are not going to fear the illness anymore, or did you let it go?
No, I mean, I let it go, but I was always expecting to die. It wasn't until I think that I hit about 60 that I thought, I'm
already here. So
yeah. I mean, my way of dealing with it was that I always kept myself occupied and busy.
Yes.
Because if I kept busy doing things, then I didn't have time to think about
dying.
The dying and the illness. So, and I used to call it displacement activity.
Yes.
So, basically, what happened was that in December of 1982, I decided that I was beginning to hear what was happening, to people in the States, all over the world, actually. And that basically, what was round the corner for me was just very unedifying. And I decided that I was going to take my own life.
Mm.
And I really wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it, but essentially I was going to take some pills, have some alcohol, I was going to run a hot bath, and I was going to slit my wrists and bleed out, which is what Plato did. That was, and so that was my plan, and I kind of had got it all prepared. And then I heard the voice of my mother, Golda, in my head. And she said, "Jonathan, you clear up your own mess. You don't leave it for others to clear up after you." And I was going to leave one hell of a mess.
Yes.
So I couldn't do it. All I know is that I'd got the bath run, I'd got everything prepared. And then in my head, I just heard my mother.
Oh my God. And your mother was alive at that time?
My mother was alive at the time.
Yes.
Yeah, she was alive at the time, but I hadn't spoken to her. I mean,
no.
She and I were, we were kind of estranged. But anyway.
Oh my God.
So
I'm sorry.
I couldn't do it.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that.
Well, thank you. So then it's a question of, all right, I can't kill myself, then I had better get on and live. But how am I going to do that? Because essentially, I feel like a modern day leper.
I know.
Who is going to want to know me?
Yes.
It's a great opening line. Oh, by the way, I have this killer virus coursing through my veins.
Yeah.
I don't want to infect you. I mean, someone's really going to open their heart to you, isn't there? I mean, anyway. So I'm left with this situation, and what I would do is that I needed to be with people.
Yes.
So, and I still have kind of isolated myself from friends, from what have you. But I'm going to the bars in the East End, and I'm standing in the shadows, putting out the vibes, don't come near me, because I really don't want to have to explain anything to you. So don't ask me any questions. And I remember picking up a newspaper. And in this newspaper was this tiny little advertisement. Gays for a nuclear-free future are running a coach on the 1st of April, 1983, to go and join a stand together around Greenham Common, which was the American Air Base and the women's camp, and Burfield and Aldermaston, which were the two British nuclear establishments. And they wanted basically to form a human chain. They wanted something like 100,000 people to join. And it said, "Everybody welcome." And I just thought, all right, this is going to be my re-entry into society.
Yes.
I am going to join that demonstration.
Right.
And I remember this was a Saturday, the 1st of April. And I remember leaving my apartment in the East End, and I went to the Tube at Shadwell, and I came out at Russell Square Tube Station, and I could see the coach outside Gaze the Word on Marchmont Street up there. And I just thought, what the fuck am I doing here? And I turned on my heels to flee. And as I turned on my heels to flee, this voice said, "Hello, my name's Nigel. Who are you?"
Oh, Nigel.
And I was stopped in my tracks, and I swung round, and I see this young man who is wearing green Wellington boots, ochre and crimson pantaloons, crimson Fair Isle singlet, and this mop of black curly hair.
Wow.
And that was Nigel Young. And I just went, "Oh, Jonathan."
Okay.
And we walked off to the coach together.
An
And I
angel.
told,
An
absolutely, an angel. And I told him about my diagnosis. And I think he didn't hear me, but no reaction. And we had the most amazing time.
Right.
I mean, it was just, chat. He's introduced me to all his friends, and it was fabulous. And at the end of the sort of the day, both of us exhausted, I said to him, why didn't he come and have tea with me the next day in the East End? I'd given him my address. And the next day came, and he arrived with a bunch of anemones and 2 jam donuts. He brought tea. And he basically said to me, "You're living isolated in the East End. I live in North London. I know of a squat in Brixton. Why don't we move in together?"
Oh.
And I just thought, oh, he knew someone that wanted to sublet or would sublet my flat. And I just thought, I'm going to be dead in a couple of months. Why not?
Why not?
And so we did. And that's kind of how I did things. Just if I thought I liked it. So yeah. So I moved out. We moved into a squat in Brixton. That was fine for 3 months. Then we had to leave there.
One day at the time. One day at the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what do you think that was the purpose of your life after this those first 8 years that were maybe the most moving? After that, how did you feel?
Well, I mean, you see, what was amazing was that he was very politically motivated and connected. He'd been part of a group called Gay Left. They had produced, back in the 70s, had produced this magazine called Gay Left. And so there was this group, there was this big miners' strike in 1984. So like 2 years after I'm diagnosed. And there was an organization called Lesbian and Gay Men Support the Miners.
Yes.
And we joined it. And for me, this was brilliant because this is displacement activity. You know, I mean, so for basically 15 months, I am with this group. We're involved with this community in South Wales. I talk about my diagnosis. I know, I've never kept it quiet, with friends. I don't tell everybody, but, but I was with friends. So
yes. We need that tribe. We need that.
Exactly.
Yes.
So anyway, so that was great. Then basically the kind of the strike finished, but this amazing person called Ken Livingstone. Ken Livingstone was basically the mayor of London. And what he was called was that he was the leader of the GLC, the Greater London Council. And the Greater London Council had, as part of their portfolio, this organization called the Inner London Education Authority. And they ran all the adult education institutes, looked after schools, what have you. So he had this amazing policy that if you were out of work and unemployed, you could pay £1, and for 12 months you could do any number of courses at any of the adult education institutes, so City Lit, Morley College, all these places.
Wow.
For £1 for 12
£1.
months.
Yes.
So anyway.
What did you did?
Well, Nigel was going with a friend of his to a trouser making class. And I said, oh, that's fun. Can I come along?
Okay.
And he said, yeah, the more the merrier. You know, we've all paid our pounds. So off we go. And it's relatively local to where we live. And I remember that lovely elderly Jewish tailor called Harry. The first thing that Harry said was, I want you to sit cross-legged on the table, because basically tailors used to buy table space, and they would have a kind of a board across their knees, and that's how they would make their garments. My father used to sell furniture. If you ever sat on a table, you were screamed at, get off the table. Chairs were sitting on, not tables. So Harry, with one phrase, had given me permission. I could transgress.
Yes.
So I'm sitting on this table thinking, how many pairs of trousers do I need? What I really need to learn is how to make a pattern.
Yes.
And somebody pipes up, oh, they do that at the London College of Fashion in Shoreditch. So I think, I've paid my £1. The next day, I go down and enroll for a pattern making class.
Wow.
And I love it. It's very geometric. It's just, there's something I just found so satisfying. And it's great. And one of the tutors said, well, I don't know if you might be interested, but we run a 3-year City and Guilds diploma in tailoring.
Wow.
And I just internally, I laughed, and I just thought, I'll be dead before I finish that.
Yeah.
But I thought, actually, you know, the strike is over. If I do it, then that means I'll be kept busy for 3 years.
Yes.
And I went to the council and I said, would you be able to give me a grant? Because they were still giving grants, not loans. I'd had a grant when I went to drama school. So, because I had been an actor in my first incarnation. So,
me too.
Right.
20, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought, actually, I should do this. So I enrolled and I started tailoring and loved it.
Wow.
Absolutely loved it.
Yes,
and suddenly 3 years has gone by in a whoosh. And what am I going to do?
Yeah. Keep going.
This is 1988.
Yes.
And one of the tutors at the London College of Fashion says, I can't get you a job, but I could get you an introduction to the wardrobe at English National Opera.
Wow.
And I just thought, I love opera.
Oh.
It is so totally overblown. I've been an actor, so theatres hold no mystique.
Wow, beautiful.
So I think, okay. So I have my interview and I go along and I'm told to go and wait in the men's workroom. So I'm sitting in the workroom feeling very nervous. Everybody's on their machines and I really don't want to engage in conversation. I'm sure they don't want to engage with me. So I'm looking at the notice board. And as I'm looking at it, this letter just jumps out at me from St. Mary's Hospital, Paddington, thanking all the people in the workroom for all the support they've given to this guy called Peter Barr, who was the men's cutter, or one of the men's cutters in the workroom, who just died from HIV/AIDS. And I thought, I want to work here because when I get ill, they'll understand.
Very
I ain't going to tell them, but
yes.
it's about safe spaces.
Yes.
Anyway,
Yes.
I did
Wow.
my interview, and at the end of the interview, the manager said, "Look, I'd really love to employ you. At the moment, we're in negotiations with the union, so I can't offer you a full-time job. But if you're prepared to do full-time freelance, so you just invoice us,
Yes.
there is a sewing machine for you." And I just thought, all right.
Why not?
And then I'll just keep on at them. So the end of the season, I got laid off. They gave me some
Yeah.
work to tide me over. Beginning of the next season, back I was. And then I kept saying every so often, and eventually I got a full-time job. And so I worked there, basically had an amazing time up until 1996.
Wow.
So in the course of that, the cutter that I worked with went on maternity leave. So I was made up to cutter. I cut 2 shows. Had never done anything like this,
Okay.
but was fabulous. Roxy came back off maternity leave. I said, "Oh, thank God you're here." Was just hand over the reins.
Yeah.
And then we did a really difficult show, and my health gave out in 1996. I got shingles internally on the phrenic nerve, and I was medically retired. And that was that. Then when I get over the shingles, my HIV consultant says, because what had happened was that I got over the shingles, but I had got no energy. I was just exhausted. And they eventually sort of did a blood test, and I had 70 T cells left. And so he said, you are going to have to bite the bullet, and you're going to have to start on the medication. And I thought, all right, I'll do it. And I remember the first week taking all these pills, nothing. And the second week, nothing. And the third week, still nothing. And I'm thinking, why am I taking all these pills? And he's worked out a regime which is actually reasonable. It was, pills in the morning, pills in the evening. Some people were on regimes where it was like 5 times a day you were taking pills. So this was relatively simple. I woke up on the morning of the 4th week. I had got so much energy. I was like Lazarus raised from the dead. I was like Atlas able to carry the world on my shoulder. I mean, it was phenomenal.
Wow.
So much so that I laid a patio outside my bedroom window. That is the patio. There. I don't know if you can see it, but
yes.
Anyway, so I laid this patio outside. It's still there. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I just had, I can't tell you, it was extraordinary. And then about 11 months on the pills, and suddenly I had got such pain in my hands and pain in my feet. And when I would go in the supermarket, I would kind of, get on the trolley and get my legs off the ground so that they wouldn't be painful. And I was thinking sort of, that anyway, it turned out that 2 of the medications that I was on, DDI and D4T, they were beginning to learn what side effects medications had. And the side effects of both those pills was to give you peripheral neuropathy. And I still have it. It's never gone away.
Okay.
I live with it.
How do you feel now? How do you feel
I take medication for it, and
Okay.
it helps. I take gabapentin and something called Nystal, and it works.
Okay.
The the gabapentin kind of dulls the pain,
Mm-hmm.
and the Nystal is something, it's called L-carnitine, and it's supposed to, whether it does,
Mm-hmm.
rebuild
Mm-hmm.
the nerve endings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
But
well.
you know,
And what plans do you have for now, the future? What are you working on?
I mean, I'm about to do a play. Um,
Yes.
so yes, um, which sort of we had done last year. So we did like, it was like a teaser. We did like four
Mm-hmm.
performances. But we're now going to do a run in September of
Okay.
it. Um, and yeah, and it's like the 40th anniversary of the miners' strike, and
Yes.
I was part of this group. I mean, did you ever see a film called Pride?
Yes. I knew you on the
All right.
film. Yes.
Well, there was a documentary that's just been made recently, which is called Striking with Pride.
Striking.
Striking with Pride,
Mm-hmm.
United at the Coalface.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, over here, it was on Sky Documentaries. I don't know whether
Mm-hmm.
you can access it quite,
I'll look
because
for it.
Sky Documentaries gave the money for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a production company called Storyville Films.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So you were
and
working there too.
well, I was interviewed
Okay.
on it. And then they were screening that the other day at Margate Pride. And so I'd been invited down to do a
Okay.
Q&A after Pride. And I was invited to join the director, who was just
Okay.
brilliant,
Okay.
um, at it. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then I'm going up to Doncaster for Doncaster Pride, because they're going to be screening Pride,
Okay.
and I'm going up with Mike Jackson, who was one of the, well, he was co-founded
Mm-hmm.
LGSM with
Okay.
Mark Ashton.
Yes, yes.
Um, so
Beautiful. What's your birthday?
the 21st of July. So it's just been.
Oh,
I'm a Cancer Leo, and
yeah, I
and
can
and
see it.
I
I
was
can see it.
75. I was 75.
Okay, okay.
Who's who
You
would have
look
thought?
great. You look great, and
Well, the secret of that is because um, since like 1969, I love hammams, real steam
yes,
baths.
yes,
So I go to the steam baths.
a
Certainly,
lot.
I try and go at least once a week.
Yes.
And I also cold water swim. So I swim certainly in the summer,
Mhm.
well, from April thing, I basically swim 5 days a week.
Okay, okay.
So
You are
that
fantastic.
that's what. But
Yeah.
I think it's the medication.
Yeah,
I
no,
think it's the
and
medication that does it.
your spirit, that you are,
Yeah, no, it is.
yes,
It's yeah.
yes.
But
Um,
I've been very fortunate.
yes,
I've really, when I think about, you know, all my contemporaries, the kind of things that they have dealt with, had to deal with, whether it's sort of lipodystrophy or lipoatrophy from,
yes.
some of the medications, or just, or cancers and stuff. And, touch wood,
Hmm, hmm,
um,
hmm. If
I've not.
if you had to print a phrase of you in a t-shirt, a phrase that you makes sense for your life,
don't know. I think probably just take each day as it comes.
Take each day as it comes.
As it comes, and love it.
And love it. And love it. Can I print a shirt and send it to you? And send it to London?
You can.
Yes.
You can.
And
yeah.
I'll put Jonathan Blake
says,
take each day as it comes and love it. Oh, thank you very much for this phrase. It's wonderful.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I'll print one for me, one for you. What's your
how lovely
your color, favorite color?
Oh, I think probably pink.
Pink. I know it.
You know, well,
yeah.
Because you see, for me, the pink triangle.
Yes.
Is really important.
Yes.
So, you know, I designed hold on, because I have one in my pocket. I designed the original badge for Lesbian and Gay Men Support the Miners.
Okay. There's a triangle.
And, well, I'm just going to unwrap it. And if you text me your address, I will send you one.
Oh, thank you.
And so I'm now looking
for
where.
Oh, beautiful.
There.
Beautiful. You designed it.
I designed the original badge.
Yes. Oh.
And then this is the 40th anniversary badge. Because this is for this year. Yes. And we did a 30th anniversary badge. And there was the most wonderful woman called Alice Kilroy who made a banner.
Uh-huh.
And what I'll do is that I will show you on Instagram.
Okay.
I'll send you those pictures. But we'll communicate on Instagram.
Okay.
And but I will send you one of these.
Thank you very much. Was really a pleasure. I'm so glad to have this conversation just for 2 hours already. Maybe.
God,
oh my
sorry.
God. I like to talk. I like to talk a lot.
Too.
I know. So, for the end of this lovely interview, I want to, as a present, give a tarot card for you.
Oh gosh, all right.
So
wow.
We will finish with this and we will communicate. I will send you a t-shirt with your phrase.
That's
one for
lovely.
Me, one for you.
That's fabulous.
Yes.
Oh, listen, Marifer, thank you so much.
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed that. It's been a pleasure.
Give me a number from 1 to 22.
Oh God, 21.
21. Okay. Oh my! Look.
Wow.
The card.
Wow. So what is that?
Yes, the devil.
The devil.
Yeah, the devil. This talk about to let go the chains, you know, to let go everything and expand. This is the love card. It's a love because it's intimate connection with your real purpose of life. Is the force that makes you achieve everything you want. The devil can do anything because he has this strength, you know?
Yeah.
And it's very good for business, for action, you know? And the work with devil is to let it go, not to have chains, not your own chains, and not accept change for anybody. So
Fabulous.
freedom. Thank to you.
Thank you.
Oh, it was
Thank you.
really, really pleasure. I want to hug you.
But thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm
Listen,
so
my
glad.
pleasure.
My pleasure too.